Welcome to Heaven on Earth podcast. I'm Raiin. Today is Tea Talk Tuesday. I have fascinating panel members from around the world coming together to talk about social issues, politics, and daily life experiences. Hopefully, we can discover solutions, have new insights, but mainly, it's time to hear the voice of the people. In honor of National Women's History Month, I am delighted to introduce 4 inspirational women that I had the pleasure of knowing personally. First, we have Lauren McMillan, a writer, a marriage family therapist at Mindful Path Counseling, and an advocate for children around the world. We have Kira Brown, a private chef, a proud mom, and the CEO business owner of Key Catering. Shira, a sustainability developer, a proud mom, an artist, and an empowerment warrior. And coming from Tulum, Mexico, we have world traveler and soul guide, experimental artist, Emerald. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me. I'm truly grateful to have an opportunity to come together and discuss various issues that are going on in our society today. Let's jump right in and get started. Welcome to Tea Tuesday. Let's start with, it's March 2021. It's been 1 year since the country shut down due to the coronavirus pandemic. We now have access to the vaccine. Do you believe in vaccines, or are you anti-vaccines? How are you feeling about this right now?
Right, you're diving in there.
No other way to go. Well, I'll start. I'll start. This is Kira. And I'm totally fine with vaccines. The history of them, I see the science behind it, including this new vaccine. I see the science behind it. I've done a little more research. Before I was very hesitant and a little skeptical about, this mass inoculation of our planet, not just America, but, everyone. And I've seen enough sci-fi movies to make me have a little skepticism. That being said, the idea of getting a vaccine, I get it for so many people who have felt imprisoned for the past year. I know a lot of elderly people with pre-existing conditions, and they've literally felt like they've been in a prison for a whole year. And a lot of fear. And so they're doing this to, move out of their prison for the most part. That being said, I have a lot of political beliefs behind the pharmaceutical companies and their profit that they're making off of this, which is just pretty much disgusting. But I have 2 standing point of views on this. It's very wishy-washy. I can't really put my foot directly into, am I for vaccines or am I against it? I get both sides. I really do.
Thank you, Kira. Anyone else have a perspective on vaccines? Or
Emerald does.
Yes, Emerald.
Hello, this is Emerald. And Kira, I can appreciate everything that you just said, and thank you for sharing that. I have been a dutiful vaccine taker until I started to look back and see that I was getting repeated negative side effects from taking them. So, for example, the flu vaccine, every time I would take a flu shot, I would get the flu. I'd look around and other people weren't getting it. I'd say, "Did you get a flu shot?" And they were telling me no. So I thought that was interesting. And then I had to become vaccinated for a lot of things when I became an international flight attendant. And that was a requirement. So I was okay with it at the time. I went ahead and took care of that. And I experienced, again, some side effects. I was sick very often, which is very common for cabin crew, which is peculiar since they get so many injections and vaccinations. You would think that that would allow for really, really strong and healthy cabin crew, but cabin crew are known for having very weak immune systems. So that was something. I started to look into aviation medicine and the history of it, at least in the United States, even though I was internationally based. And I started to find some really horrific accounts of how aviation medicine had been established, and that there were people who were invited from Nazi Germany over to the United States to help establish aviation medicine here. Or, well, I'm not actually in the United States right now, and this is actually one of the reasons, because there were just so many things that I felt locked in by when it came to what was starting to sound like it would be forced, required, enforced, etc. In addition to that, I actually had I had a severe reaction to a vaccine that I took in order to study abroad in Ecuador, and I ended up having to miss out on a lot of the trip or be very, very sick during the trip. And then when I got back to school, I actually had to withdraw from the semester because I was too sick to complete it. So I've unfortunately just had a really nightmare run trying to be as responsible as I could with these vaccines and with trying to make my body healthier, but they haven't worked well for me. So I definitely don't believe in any forced vaccines. I believe people should absolutely have the choice to do what they need to do for themselves.
Thank you, Emerald.
Absolutely.
Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Shira. I'd have to agree. Well, let's see. I mean, I should start and preface by saying that I think a lot of the like global experience has been people having to withdraw from their everyday lives. So when it comes to a vaccine feeling sort of like a fix or a solution to this issue on like a larger scale, I totally understand that. I just have had a sort of a different experience with my job. Like the company that I work in is sustainability, so it's really sort of skyrocketed and like ramped up during this time, and we've like grown 5 to 10 times the size that we were at the beginning of the pandemic. Yeah, so in that regard things have not slowed down, so I haven't fully felt that like disconnect. If anything, I've been struggling with like an overwhelm of how to keep up during this time. But like in terms of like my personal, first of all, I haven't gotten COVID, and that doesn't, obviously that's like a, what's the word when you, an anecdote, right? Like, oh, I haven't gotten it, but it's like I don't feel this immediate necessity for me to get it. I don't think that there's enough information for me personally to get it, or to feel like it's the solution to a change that I need to see happen in my own life. But I respect people feeling that, like needing to get that vaccine to make everyone feel safer. And then in terms of my daughter, I certainly, she's 3, and like I'll probably hear some heat on both sides about this, but yeah, I just would not give her that vaccine with the amount of research that's been done, or like lack thereof, because I just don't feel like there's enough, and like it's not even that it's not even that I'm pro or anti-vaccine, and I totally get what you were saying, Kira, about the business of it, and at the same time I'm like, in a way, if my family lineage had created the vaccine, I'd probably like, rich, you know what I mean? So it's like there's that whole like, the business aspect, like who's pocketing this? It ain't me, shit, So I don't know. Yeah. It's like a very multi-layered situation. But I just personally I also, 2 of my office members got COVID. I was interfacing with them, didn't get COVID. So I don't know if my blood's just really strong or what's going on, but I don't know. I'd have to think about it. I'd have to see what happens in a couple months from now with the vaccine, and then maybe get it, make a decision. So
thank you,
that's kind of
Shira.
where I stand as of
Anybody
now.
else, or we move on to the next question?
I'll jump in real quick because
Thanks, Lauren.
no problem, Lauren. I'm just gonna give the I'm gonna give the terrified side of it, only because my father is a doctor, and he put the fear of God in me, or the fear of man in me, about COVID and about getting vaccinated, and just how important it is and all these things. And I want to say blah, 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 because I don't know that I fully agree with that. I agree with a lot of what Tira and what Shira and what Emerald had to say on the issue. And it is kind of, I'm an in-between person. I'm also not a parent, so I don't have a child that I have to think about vaccinating. If I did have a child, I wouldn't want to give them this vaccine though. And my dad would probably kill me. He'd probably kill me. He'd probably disown me. Like, really, he's adamant about, like, get vaccinated, people are dying, you know. So I've been kind of scared, and I work in treatment facilities with drug and alcohol, substance abuse. And so, and those places have been rampant with COVID. And it's just one person and I also work with our homeless population, and they're being quarantined, in their little pods around Los Angeles, because it's just, I feel like I am exposed a lot to it. I am exposed to a lot of different people. So I did get vaccinated and got the first vaccine, and I have to still get my second shot. I just spoke with a girlfriend of mine who got her first shot the other day, and she just feels so guilty about it. And she's at home in bed and she's tired and her arm hurts. And it's like, everyone, it puts a feeling in all of us, and I honestly did it because my father scared me. I mean, I let someone kind of get in my head about it. And so I did that. But I also feel like I'm around so many different types of people, a lot like with flight attendants, like international flight. I can't imagine like how many people you're exposed to that way. In my field as well, I see that too. So it scared me enough to get the first shot. And if I grow a third nipple, well,
Right.
that's gonna suck. I'm extreme.
I was gonna say, just let us know.
You let us know, Lauren.
I don't trust this. I don't trust anything. I don't trust anything usually that comes from the media, that comes from the TV. So I don't, I'm in between two though.
Thank you all so much. Honestly, I think it's really important because you do have varying perspectives on how you see the issue. And I think, Lauren, what you said was so important, that, your girlfriend is feeling guilty for having to take the shot, just because she's not quite sure herself whether or not she did the right thing. Yeah, because I personally stand on I honor and respect everyone's journey. And whichever they decide is right for them, I celebrate them and hold space for, their highest and best outcome and experience. Now, one last thing on coronavirus. As we understand right now, several states within the union have opened up. They are back to no mask, social distancing is gone. How do you feel about that? Is it too soon?
Well, I can jump in really quick. This is Lauren. Jump in. Well, just because I have a client that just moved to Washington State, and everything there is open, and he's flipping out about it. He's upset. Everyone, like people want the masks. They want the distance. They got used to it somehow. And I think we're in a weird state where we need to get back together before we totally just stay apart. I think everybody is getting very comfortable with being apart, and they're comfortable with just seeing half of a face, or less than half of a face. And it's not, I hate to say the word, but it's not normal. It's not normal for us. It's not normal for this society, for this world. We need to see each other and touch each other. And I think it's scaring people that some places are opening up and that we can eat indoors now. That's like a nightmare for some people now. Can you imagine eating indoors? So.
Right.
Right, when you put it in that context, I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, geez, that just really ramps it up. Oh, well, forget that. Your life's over. And that can't be how we continue to move on. People aren't aren't living well that way. We need each other.
I can,
Yeah.
I celebrate, this is Emerald. I really celebrate what was just said. I think that was really courageous. And I'm with you. I did leave the United States because the stress of so many mandates was making me really, really ill. And I was experiencing a bit of a lockdown. It's almost like I sensed it. I got a precursor coming and started to experience that lifestyle before everyone else had to undergo it. And so I was able to utilize some of the skills I'd used before in my own isolation, figuring out what was going on with my body. And I saw how unhealthy it was to be so isolated in that way. So when I saw the whole country going through that and lots of other countries, I got really concerned immediately for people's psychological well-being and their physical well-being, because we get to socialize and we get to stimulate those positive parts of our immune system by getting hugs, by having laughter, by having joy, by sharing new experiences, by going out and exploring, by having new stimuli. And so when people started to say, no, I'm just content with social media and being on my screen and being at home by myself, and then saying things like, oh, I'm afraid to online date because, then I have to like touch people and things like that. I just started to say, okay, well, if we're not exchanging any germs with each other, then none of us can have a stronger immune system to cope with any of the many new viruses that are discovered daily. I mean, it was really bizarre to me that constantly people were getting diagnosed with COVID, but nobody was getting diagnosed with STDs all of a sudden. Nobody was getting diagnosed with heart disease. Nobody was getting cancer anymore. Nobody got diabetes, right? So I was just kind of like, okay, well, this seems to be a really overwhelming departure from a lot of different types of healthy life. And I'm really glad to see a lot of people get back to some type of life outside of lockdown.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emerald.
Agreed. This is Kira. I was just, hearing you guys, and it's like, that's the part where I don't think, probably another 6 months to a year from now, we're going to be studying the psychological, what's going to happen from that, what comes of that. And, these things take time because we live in such a short-term society where everything is, what happens in the next 2 months, or the next week, instead of looking down the line and really seeing the effects of things. And this is one of those that it's just like, how are we really going to change as a society, as a culture? Or are we going to go back to what we know as our innate human selves, which is community, which is interaction. So it's going to be really interesting just to see the fallout, and not just for we're all adults here, but for the younger generations and older generations. It's really it's going to be so interesting just to see how they've played with human nature and the results of it in the long term for a whole generation and swap of humanity. So that's going to be so interesting. And then do we need it to come back to normal? Yes, without a doubt. I think people are kind of slipping back into normal here in California, where we have it pretty hardcore mandates, as Imra was saying. People are rebelling in their own ways against it. I think I just see way less masks when masks are still supposed to be worn, and people are just over it. You can't hold the genie in the bottle for too long. It just, that's not how we humans work. There's a rebel in group of 10. There's always at least 2 rebels in that group. So power to the rebels.
Thank you, Kira.
Yeah.
We're the rebels.
Yes.
Right.
I would say I'm definitely, this is Shira, I'm probably one of those rebels who gets those side eyes. I've been filmed. I went for a jog one time, and like this girl was like, you don't care about essential workers. And like she pulled the whole cancel culture thing and like filmed me. Of course, I was like sweating and like looked like crap. I was like, cool, I'm more mad about that than the whole political part of it.
I love you, Shira. Yeah.
But like, it was hard. It was horrible. It was, and she was like 16. I was like, what the fuck is going on? I just want to get a smoothie. It was so insane. And like, I felt, but like the serious part is like the feeling, right? Like feeling that it was evoked in me that was like, oh my God, like I am, well, how do I point my finger on? It's like, it's this cancel culture mixed with this like societal outcast thing. And it's when you ask like, how did we get to this place? It's like, oh, well, we, for whatever, first of all, we're creatures of habit and of nature. So when we collectively agree on something, where is that coming from? Well, most likely propaganda, the news. I mean, what are we feeding ourselves? So like, as you're taking that in, we're all subscribing to this thing of like, okay, if we don't participate in wearing a mask or doing all of these things, which we probably haven't fully checked the science behind, we are immediately like trying to kill a bunch of old people, or like we are immediately like, not to be brash, but like we are somehow innately bad. And I think that's what it's gotten to with so many different issues right now, where it's like, if we don't do this thing, we're socially outcasted. We don't care about humanity. And there's this guilt and this shame that comes along with it. And it's like, I think that is the part that's like ultimately going to decide like who, like you said, like everyone gets to make decisions for themselves. But I just don't think that it should never be propelled by this like guilt and this shame of like, because I'm making this political decision, I am a bad person who doesn't care. And like, I'm trying really hard not to subscribe, not to say I don't wear masks when I go to the grocery store, you know, or like that I don't participate and follow rules. But it's like when you don't do that, it's this like immediate like, you're this supporter and you're horrible and you're bad, and it's like, I'm just trying to breathe out here. Like,
Well, Shira, thank you for that. Like, honestly, I love your honesty and that you're candid. I love everybody just being, you know, very transparent, because I feel like our culture and society today, that is, I think, I forget who I was talking to earlier, they're saying that is our greatest gift, our greatest, you know, they said the pen is the sword, but now it's just having the opportunity to stand in your truth and, you know, and live it and not be judged for it. So with you talking about cancer or cancel culture, Shira, I was going to talk about a little later on, but let's go into, and we'll see how this will bleed into cancel culture next. I'm not usually one to normally get into pop culture, but this topic isn't necessarily, it goes above and beyond pop culture. Oprah Winfrey, she sat down with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry on March 7th to have a nothing is off limits, quote unquote, interview. And this sparked a conversation around the nation, around the world. The royal family was accused of being racist as a result of Meghan coming.
It's a big surprise.
Like, wait,
okay, and that's my question. Do you believe, you know, first off, was Meghan Markle, was she naive to believe that she could come into this experience and not be aware?
Sorry,
you know?
that was Lauren.
Tell me, Lauren, what are your feelings on this whole experience? Because it's so many different levels.
I don't want to sound horrible, and my mom chastised me for this, but I was really just and maybe it's just rude, and I don't mean to be rude by how I feel about it, because I'm not. I mean, I'm Black. You know, I'm a Black woman, and I don't want anyone to be racist. I don't want anyone to call out color or shades or anything like that. But this is who you're dealing with. It's kind of like you're playing with a poisonous snake. If you get bit, don't be mad. You know, this is the British monarchy or hierarchy or royalty, whatever. We don't have that here in America. They have a whole lineage to uphold. And yes, that's going to be a question when you bring in somebody from another background. And with Black children and mixed children, you can't guess what's going to pop up. That baby girl could look as Black as anything. And what are you going to do? What can you do? it's just, but
Mm.
I love Meghan Markle, and I love Harry. I like the idea of the royals. I'm a big Princess Diana fan. I think this is Princess Di coming back from the grave.
Okay.
Like, you people need to act right. Like, you people
Right.
still suck, and you still have these views, and it's still horrible. And now you're going to put it on a little tiny innocent child and a new couple, and that's really fucked up of you. You know, but also Megan needs to know what she's walking into. And no one said that they weren't racist. I don't think we've ever said that. No one said that that wasn't going to be a question. And if you think that that's not going to be a question, you're a little bit naive. And I'm sorry, I work with kids all the time, and color and shade is something that comes up regardless. So yeah, it's going to come up. It's going to come up. Does that make them horrible because they want to keep their whole picture white? I don't know. I think so. But I also understand that you're dealing with an entire system. And when you're dealing with a system, you can't come in there and try to buck it up and change it. You can try, but I mean, don't be mad when you lose. And this is a huge system. So that's how I feel about it. It's a little wonky. I feel like I'm blaming Megan. I feel like I'm accepting the racism, but I'm also just saying you're playing with a poisonous snake. Be prepared.
Now, do you feel that she was inappropriate to step forward and speak against?
Do it.
Okay.
Tell people. Tell on them. That's because it's wrong, because it's racist. Sure. But you know what you're dealing with. Don't try to you're gonna step up and step down. She's stepping out of that role. It's kind of like, well, maybe step up and stay there. I don't know. Maybe step up and just and show that you're not leaving, or step out and be like, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to even put my family through any of this. We exit the royal family. I can understand both. I can see doing both, but yeah, speak on it. That's I don't think that's wrong. But you knew what you're dealing with, and she knew way more than we ever knew what she's dealing with. She's been to those dinners. She's been to those cocktail hours. She knows.
Thank you, Lauren. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. And I'll say, Shira, here, I also think when you're in love with somebody, there's a level of like naivety that I got a little one. There's a level of like naivety that comes along. It's almost like rose-colored glasses sometimes, where you're like, you know what? Me and you against the world.
Yes.
I mean, doesn't matter what level it is. Yeah, like it's me and you against the world.
Right.
We'll get through it. I've been there. Okay. And and so I would never blame Megan. I just think, hi. I would never blame her. For me, and also, like, I'm an Irish woman. I've got African descent in me, but I present very Irish looking. And so there's like certain nuanced things that I can't necessarily speak on, but in terms of like her speaking out, going through an experience, falling in love, not really knowing the extent of kind of how embedded and full of bullshit these people are. I can understand that. And then waking up to it, and especially going through having a child where you really need support, and having these little things where you're like, wait, I thought this was going to be cool. Plus they're like so swept up. There's like 3 little boys looking at me like, can I play with your dog? I'm like, not right now. Like, like you're getting swept up in the moment, in the momentum, you're excited, you're in love. And then, you start to see, you brush off these little comments that are probably made. And then it's like you completely feel isolated, and you're like, I can't put up with this. I got to separate from this situation for my own mental health, and I'm going to take a step back, and now I'm going to let everybody know why. And she should go over that. I'm just kidding. She should figure out a way to like kind of, I mean, it's a new generation. So hopefully this puts them on blast enough that there's some shifts, major shifts. I don't know. I don't know enough
Thank
about
you,
a monarchy.
Shira.
Me,
But
please.
Anybody else?
This is Emerald. I would
Emerald.
love to speak on this. I am fascinated by some of these things. I don't tend to follow them very closely because of how emotionally drained I become, and I find them to be like one long saga of just reality TV because I believe that nothing gets to these scripted media television shows and these major media television shows that isn't pre-approved by royal families and by the elite. So I don't believe any story is getting out about them
Interesting.
that they haven't approved of. I think that when a family sees that it's on its way out or an empire sees that it's falling, it can either go down with the ship and make it look like it failed, or it can say, hey, let's make it look like it was something else. And especially if we can utilize other people's energy, and get people to open up old wounds and get people to give over their attention to something that's been happening over and over, but present it as though it's new. I think, I don't know what Meghan Markle signed up for. I think that when it comes to people like Meghan Markle, even like the Obamas, I think that they get like very much groomed for these things from a young age. And by the time they realize what they've been groomed for, it's really too late to back out of the role that they've been chosen to play, and I think I've seen a lot of, it's usually like some horror film. It's usually hidden away and buried in something that mainstream society isn't seeing. But there's actually a series called Ares that was made by the Dutch. And it's a bit about like a Trojan horse. And when you said, overthrow them, I'm here for it. But I also think that overthrow scenario is one that, like I said, is predetermined. I see it as these empires playing chess with each other and them all shaking hands in a room and saying, we're friends and let's see how we can, entertain and feed off of the energy of the people. So that's my take.
I like that.
Well, thank you. Wow.
Yeah.
Really.
This is Kira. I agree with all of your perspectives too. On the human side, she was pregnant and her in-laws suck. I mean, that's painful enough to have a relationship with the man that you love and you're having a baby. And this is supposed to be like this cherished, Pinterest moment where all the pictures are going to be hanging and everything's going to be lovely. And you're a princess to add to it. But in all actuality, it sucks. And so that's her side of it. And maybe, like you said, the rose-colored glasses were getting very dim. And so she had to rebel. She's an American who's like, this stuff is ridiculous. We don't know a lot about that lineage that's so important and powerful for an entire country that goes, thousands of years back. But at the same time, she's not the first one. There have been other royals and English royals at that who have come out and rebelled. I can't remember their names, but for some strange reason, I watch these kinds of movies, and this has happened over and over again. So her, naivete of just not, watch The Queen, watch any of this, read a book about this. I mean, that would be my perspective and a lot of Americans' perspective, like, you do better. But at the same time, maybe she will be the catalyst for this new woke, nothing stands in our way, cancel culture world that we now live in, to say the English monarchy, which is one of the last monarchies on the planet that actually mean anything. There's still kings and queens in parts of Europe, but this one actually has some kind of soap opera glamour behind it that we care about for some stupid reason. Sorry for those who love it.
No, I get it.
Because I was a fan too. I am a fan. I watched these, I've always loved the princess idea. I mean, it as you were saying, Emerald, there are back thousands of years. And so maybe this is the catalyst for this idea of superior blood, which is so ridiculous, to be annihilated.
Great saying that, Kira, because I was going to ask
that.
So
right.
so absurd.
No, that was my next question and my last question on all of this aspect of it. How do you feel about the concept and idea behind there being royal blood, there being a royal lineage, which is creating a society of hierarchy? Do you believe that there are people that are born with a special kind of blood?
Tiger blood, like Charlie Sheen talked about.
Absolutely not.
It's basically.
Right.
I mean,
Oh, go ahead.
No, this is Kira again. I was just saying how at this
okay, I'll just jump in.
2020, we know that scientifically that makes zero sense. But just to the idea of it, we can the idea of white superiority and all that kind of stuff comes down to it's from this. This is the language of that. And so, like, come on, world, because this is a global awareness moment. We can let this one go. That's what my take on it.
Well, let me ease on into, thank you again, Kira, going into cancel culture, because what happened as a result of this interview with Oprah Winfrey, it spurred lots of conversations that happened on social media. And I believe this is once again part of the healing process of humanity, that we've got to address these issues. And I, for whatever reason, came across someone talking with Sharon Osbourne was on the talk, and she had a conversation with her co-host, Cheryl Underwood, who's African-American. And, Sharon Osbourne being British, she was very offended by her saying one of her friends is racist. But as a result, going back to cancel culture, people are asking now, because Sharon Osbourne cussed out her co-host or just said some, offensive words, should she be canceled? And the fact that cancel culture has gotten to that point of where if you say something, you might lose your job, which I understand and get it, because I used to be a human resource manager. So there are rules and regulations. But at the point, are we losing our sense of freedom of speech? How do you feel about cancel culture in the big spectrum of things?
Can I say
Yes,
something
please.
quickly about the legacy or the last, just very brief? I think, and then I want to speak on cancel. I think that we are psychologically prone to hierarchical systems, having nothing to do with any specific culture, race, this, that, and the other. Just in terms of idolizing things or having something to look to and be like, oh, they've done something great. I think the human thing at the center of it is that we all, I know I want to create a legacy for my daughter. Doesn't mean I want to have me as queen and a king and the this, that, and the other. It just means I'm going to do something great. I'm going to pass it on, and I want that to continue. And I want to become an ancestor and be remembered in that way. So I want to make a footprint. I think the issue is when people have not done anything great for a really long time, and we're still idolizing them. So that's with this whole idea of royal blood. It's okay, well, if we've defunct that, right, then what are we idolizing? Just a couple translucent people with no, what are they doing? You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I felt about the that thing. And then cancel culture, I think there's a time and a place, but I feel like it's gotten out of hand where political correctness is getting out of hand. So that's taking away from the humanness. It's almost like we are kind of wearing masks in a way, which is weird. But that's it. That's how I feel. There's a time and a place. And I think that I think cancel culture has gotten out of hand, and it's almost infantilizing us in a way, especially as a woman, because it's we're pretty strong. You know what I mean? We can.
Thank you, Shira.
But yeah.
Yes.
Anybody else on
this
cancel
is Emerald.
culture?
So again, I found myself trying to have some type of bird's eye view, even though the truth is I can get really emotionally caught up with these things. And that's why I've spent so much time trying to analyze them. So global crisis versus cancel culture is what came up for me. So I find it interesting that in the middle of these things that are called global crises and the many terms that have been utilized that seem to come up out of nowhere, even though there have been whole entire widespread flus and things that in the past did actually kill droves of people, where you could go outside, Black Death, Black Plague, things like this, where you could literally go outside of your door and see people laid out on the street. And but it seems more severe and harsher terms are being used in modern day. And at the same time, Netflix movies continue to roll out, TV series continue to roll out, and people continue to be able to deliver up-to-date scripted news media stories about what was happening, and a lot of them centered around this cancel culture. And I found that was really stimulating this stress response in people, because these scenarios can make us imagine ourselves in them, and it's what would we do, what would we do, what would we do, constantly, as though we're constantly under some type of psychological or social or emotional attack. And so I would say, like, we should look at people who are not exposed to what seems to me to be a purely media and social media driven phenomenon, like people who are living away from having to cope with relentless harassment about what side you're on. Are you good? Are you bad? Are you the villain? Are you the hero? You know, and then especially considering the fact that these situations seem to be unfolding in a way where there's this big brother or this father figure or this father organization you have to go to solve the problem, because people don't feel comfortable relating to each other and saying, hey, you did something, you said something, I really wasn't okay with it, you know, and let's agree to relate to each other. Let's have a conversation about it. Or let's not, but let's deal with each other as people. But instead it's like, okay, I have to call the HR manager because that's the process. The process takes me out of having a human experience that we have to work through. So nobody gets to evolve. Everyone just has to stay on whatever side they were born into and just keep defending that. And I think that takes away our opportunity to grow as people. So I think the more we can come back to relating to each other in one-on-one, in small groups, and not having to make everything so formal, and not having to seek outside people or higher ups or big people, the boss, to come in and resolve this through these standard procedures that really don't apply to these individual cases. I think that, you know, the goal should be to ideally come back and be able to relate to your fellow human being and say, you know, hey, ouch, or choose even to not have to say anything and to just get away from the people who are doing things that offend you and not give them so much attention to feed their behavior.
I like that.
Thank you, Emerald.
Yeah.
Oh,
Anyone else on cancel culture?
sure. This is Kira. No, I was. Go ahead.
Kira.
Okay. Yeah, I, you know, cancel culture, in my opinion, has definitely gotten out of hand. It's kind of, you know, when a good thing goes bad. And I got it at first. It was kind of like, you know, there's a need to put these folks who have never taken accountability on blast, and like, let's blast them away, because they've been the reason why our society has been unjust and unfair for so long. And that is true. And then it started to get a little more micro and little more micro and little more micro. And so at this point, you know, you're canceled in your local church, you know, you're canceled in your local, you know, family. You know, just the canceling is pretty harsh. And as a Black woman, you know, I'm expected to be a counselor or a canceler. And so I had an experience recently where, you know, there was definitely justification for some kind of, you know, questioning behind people's motives and their actions. And, you know, I was looked at like, so what do you think? Are you is it time to cancel? And, you know, like Emerald was saying, you know, it's so unfortunate. Instead, you know, that it's a time for me as a person who wants to be open-minded. You know, I'm not about cancel culture. I'm much more about just having a conversation with that person so that we can have an understanding. Now we can come together and teach that understanding to the rest of the people in our you know, world and groups, and let that spread. But the harsh tone of canceling everyone. I honestly think that it definitely has a youth base to it. Just because as you grow older, you realize that, yeah, I was an idiot back then, and now I'm not so dumb. I've changed somewhat. And so just that kind of awareness that people do change as time goes on. Give some people, now systems that have stayed stagnant for hundreds of years. Yeah, let's do something. Let's cancel the hell out of it. There's certain things, equal pay. I mean, come on,
Right.
let's cancel the hell out of that and change that immediately. I do like that the immediacy of cancel culture, though. If something gets canceled, it immediately changes. And before, it took decades. I hear people in the Senate and the Congress, and they were like, I've been fighting for this cause for 30 years. I'm like, oh God, why can't we just cancel that and move on to a new rule? So I get both
Right.
sides, but yeah, that's my take on cancel culture.
I
Thank
was
you,
gonna
Kira.
say really quickly, and I don't have a
And
lot to say on
Lauren?
it. I was just gonna say I'm an '80s baby, 1981, and we let things ride in the '80s. There was no cancel, nothing. There were comedians. Things were funny. Things were all over the place. I had a girl call me a nigger. There was all kinds of things that happened that taught me about life and taught me how to bring the story back to my family, to my tribe. And with cancel culture, a lot of what Kira was saying too, it's over. Snap your fingers and it's done. There's no conversation. There's no dialogue. I'm a therapist. I'm really big on dialogue. I'm really big on communication and having the conversation. And so it does feel very youthful. It feels like I don't want to hurt, make the millennials feel bad. And I think technically I am a millennial, but I don't really think I am. It sounds like something that they want to do. And it's like, oh, we'll just get rid of it. Just, snap your fingers, unlike it, whatever. Put an unhappy face emoji. And that just, no, let's talk about it. I didn't know about racism until I got to talk about it because someone called me a name they shouldn't have. But it's the conversations, and our kids need to have these conversations. It's not something that we need to keep from them. We don't need to protect them from the conversation. The conversation's not scary. It's the actions that come without the conversation is scary. That's horrible. But the conversation is a conversation. So canceling something is just all or nothing. I'm not about the all or nothing. So, yeah.
Thank you, Lauren. Wow, ladies, beautiful. I've learned a lot just sitting, having the opportunity to hear you all speak and voice your opinions on this. Let's move on to the next topic. So we are here in 2021, and we have been gifted an opportunity to see what it's like to have a female and a female person of color as the first vice president of the United States. Have you felt any shift, or do you feel any different about having Ms. Harris in office, or what are your feelings behind it?
Question. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Because I was going to say, I personally kind of feel as if, because there are so many other things going on, and we're so used to having what you would quote unquote say with Barack Obama, he was a celebrity. We also had Mr. Trump, and he was a celebrity, whether you like him or not. I just kind of feel like the attention and the energy intentionally has been kept away from Biden and Harris, in the sense of, maybe we just got the overkill of having our political leaders so heavily focused in our lives. But have you experienced anything, or just even felt personally like, wow, Miss Harris is the vice president of the United States?
I think that this is Emerald. I think that a muted person was chosen on purpose. I think with both of I am, you can just call me the person who's going to find some type of something going on behind the scenes, So I'm like, okay, these folks were like same White House, same government. You feel me? Like same United States government. Nobody gets in there who's not pre-approved. That's what I say. I think that, while we're focused on other things, they are working. They are at work. So I'd be curious to know, what are they working on while we're talking about the royal family in a whole other country? You know what I'm saying? I think that the Obama administration did. I thought, as far as celebrities and people I get to look at and watch and view, I loved everything about the Obamas. As far as people who were administrators, there's very little that I'm aware of what they did and did not do, because there was so much of a charade, and because different media stories were being fed to people in different parts of the country. And so when it comes to now, like, I'm sure that there is one side of the country that's being aggressively fed stories about her and what she's up to and how she's no good and how she signed this thing and it's a huge problem. While those of us who were assumed to have voted for her or considered Democrats or Democratic states and blue states are kind of getting a break from maybe her and Biden, while we get fed these other things. So I'm just like, I hope that, you know, whatever's getting signed and whatever's getting decided right now, while the celebrity of her is not coming through as much, that it's stuff that we actually want in the long term.
I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emerald.
This is Lauren. I like
Anyone else?
what Emerald had to say about it, because I don't feel like I am very much a part of this presidency, this elect. Like, I mean, I know who's there, but I don't feel like I'm a part of it. And I don't. And to be honest, I'm so tired from Trump. I don't want to be a part of it. I'm glad they're there. I hope they do well. I hope they do the right thing. But we've got a lot of other things to talk about. And I don't know that I'm focusing so much there. I saw her yesterday with President Biden was giving an address, and she had on this really nice pantsuit. And I just thought, Lauren, why would you just notice her clothes? Like, why would you just call it out as a thing to notice? But I did. I mean, she was nice. She was very nice. But it was just one of those moments of like, no, that's your vice president. That's cool. That's fucking cool. But we've been beat over the head with all of this, and I love the Obamas, but we've been beat over the head with all of this, and I'm tired. I'm so tired that I don't know that I can hear everything new that's coming. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you, Lauren. Anyone else?
Speaking of looks, has anybody seen her like 1980s or not to sexualize, but has anyone seen her like short cut with those Howard? Oh my God. Okay. That did it for me. I was like, I appreciate how ambitious she is. Just seeing her, like, you know, we're talking about equal pay and rising to the top as women, and like, good for her. She got far, you know what I mean? So, but other than that, I can so relate to just really being exhausted by, have my like nuclear family that I'm like focused on, and my own ambitions, and like, so reading through everything that's happening in policy, I can see how it's a lot easier to just kind of take in the flash, or just take in, you know, what we're being fed in terms of like, oh, politically, this is what they did, wherever that region might be. And in California, obviously, that's like very pro Biden Harris. So that's my
thank you, Shira.
Sure. I am getting bad reception right now. Sorry about that. So I hope I don't go out. But this is Kira. I always give it up to Kamala Harris. I hope I say her name right. And, you know, it's just being a woman in her career, she has worked so hard to get to wherever she is, which is now the vice presidency. So, you know, just all the steps that she took, she went by the book. She did all of the right things to get to where she is. But, you know, that being said, politics is usual. I mean, you know, there would be so much to do that's so drastic and dramatic for us to have anything that I can be excited about. That would be like, you know, shutting down everything and starting new with so many things. I was more of a fan of Bernie Sanders, to be completely honest. So, you know, that being said, I truly, I give it up to her, and her journey, in her career, because this is, you know, she went from lawyer to a prosecutor to, you know, she's moved up her scale, and she has a lot of respect in her circle as just, you know, any Black woman or any woman or any person coming up as a lawyer, in law school right now is probably seeing her as like the pinnacle of where they can go. But, you know, that being said, you know, Biden, good luck, man. Good luck, America. I feel like, you know, I was just telling someone recently, like, oh, it feels like it's, you know, 1992 again, where I could care less about politics. You know, the one thing Trump did do was he really initially Obama did was make us become interested in the political process. And then Trump, you know, really made us interested, and he demanded our attention, for us to be aware of how this whole process goes. And so I do have to, you know, in this whole American story, I hope we don't fall short and stop paying attention. I know I have somewhat, probably a lot, but I know just as humans, you know, we need that kind of charisma, to keep our attention at bay. And so far, Biden, man, I just hope he's a good old granddad. You know, that's my hope. But, you know, that's as far as I can go.
Well, thank you, Kira. Well, ladies, we are coming closer to the end of the hour, and I just want to come in with some more positive questions, just a few before we say goodbye. Do you feel?
We're all very excited.
Do you feel the children born today will still be dealing with the same social issues that we've inherited from generations before us?
That was Emerald.
No, okay, love it. Yeah.
I think that the media is throwing a lot of propaganda on my generation and suggesting that we don't know how to get along and don't want to, and want to participate in cancel culture. But what I witness between people around the world, and I'm especially getting to meet a lot of international people coming through Tulum, we are really out here trying to get along. I think folks are real tired of all of this fighting. I think a lot of people have grown up in war-torn countries who are able to communicate with people who have not now. There is cross-communication, and these kids seem to be over the fighting. They grew up with a lot of toxic households, a lot of toxic politics, a lot of toxic religion, a lot of toxic food. And I think that they're just like, y'all are stupid, and, you know, we're going to do whatever we want to do. And I think it's just that sometimes that means they're turning more inward and turning toward connecting online instead of getting out and talking to each other in person. And that's just, you know, I don't like that so much. But as far as the social issues, I think there really is a lot of connectivity, and there are at least people crossing over the barrier of country, of nation, of identity to bridge these gaps and to try to find some commonality between them. My pleasure.
Emerald, thank you. So one other question. What do you feel that you can do on a daily basis to be a part of the upliftment of humanity?
Well, I'll speak on that. This is Shira. I think one of the things that's really important, especially that I try to do with my kid, is like not teach her to trust what she kind of has to say. Like teach her to trust that what her instincts are right. If she feels like saying something, not just anything, but like if she feels like she needs to converse about something, like we've been saying this whole conversation, like have that conversation. Trust that is a sort of bridge to understand better. What am I trying to say here? I'm watching a kid run around with a dog. I'm like, don't run to the street. I think like just giving people the opportunity, as everybody's trying to be politically correct, to live outside of any ideologies right now, or like any sort of, I believe things have gotten sort of dogmatic, even on the left, right? Like even in the progressive realm, like just make sure you're speaking your truth and knowing that you're coming from a good place, and don't lose that humanness, don't lose that like connection that we have to have a real raw conversation. And I try to do those on a daily basis, and sometimes humor really helps with that. So that's kind
Thank
of
you,
where I come
Shira.
from.
Anyone else want? Because I've got one more question, unless you want to
I can
jump on
say
that one.
something. This is Lauren. I work with kids.
Come
Lauren,
here.
can you come closer to the mic?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, one
Lauren,
second.
can you come closer to the mic because you're far?
Hello? Is that better? Okay, sorry. I work with children a lot, and I just
Yes.
think that that's the way I
Yeah.
can help, is by working with the kids. That they're what we're gonna leave this earth to, and they teach me so much, and I learn so much from them, that if I can keep doing that and keep plugged in there, I think I'll be helping things out. You got to whisper to the little ones, because they take it and they run with it, and they know everything and they say everything, and so it's like, you know.
The hour is up and we've run out of time. I want to thank our panel members, Shira, Kira, Emerald, and Lauren, for their fantastic insight and standing in their truth. Join us next week for another hour of Tea Talk Tuesday. We'll have new panel members and new topics of discussion right here on Heaven on Earth podcast. I'm Raiin, sending you love and light.